Did everyone sign in the sign-in sheet? Thank you. We are live.
I'll send you each a quick text.
Alright, so this is map 11. Map 9.
Can we start by me asking a question?
We gotta open the meeting, we haven't opened officially, I'm
Okay.
waiting for Zoom to hook
I
up.
got you.
We have a couple other things we do. And I'll announce when we open the public hearing.
Gotcha.
Probably should still put public comment on there, just in case.
Yeah, I should have. I'm sorry about that.
Try this. Is Zoom powered up?
It's not.
What? I did.
Oh, I'm gonna switch seats if that's all right. Think it'll be a few more minutes.
I think it's coming up.
Okay, so if I do a roll call startup, should be all right.
Everything has to be recorded. That's good.
Yeah, Carol's just joining.
Go out to the
All right, perfect. So Zoom is up, we are live and working. Hold the order at 7:01. Members present, myself, Kyle Smith, Curtis Hopkins, Mike, is my third, Matt Meacham, Henry Underwood, and Jack Jettins. Carol Ogilvy is calling in from Zoom.
Can you hear us okay, Carol?
Yes, sorry, as soon as I unmute myself, yes, I can hear everything.
Great.
So you can hear us all good? All right.
Yes.
All right, first thing, just to check, is there anyone here that's for public comment that's not for the solar project?
Yeah, we're not for it.
No, I meant, do you have something else you want to discuss other than the solar project? Just want to make sure I give people a chance before we go into that, because that could take a while. So everyone's here for the solar project, in
Yes.
terms of for the meeting? All right. And that, we want to do minutes, get that out of the way, and then move to public hearing? Just kind of get that. Okay.
Meetings from, meetings from last week, we can look at them. Those are meeting minutes.
You get a copy of that? We need a copy of that.
No, I just, I got a copy earlier.
Last week. Oh.
3rd, 2024.
Is there a second? Any discussion?
Who was that directed to?
The board.
Okay, I'm just not sure.
All those in favor of the minutes of July 3rd as written?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions?
Make a motion to approve the Town of Troy Planning Board non-public meeting minute from Wednesday, July 3rd, 2024.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstained?
It doesn't reflect the meeting at all.
All right. So we will move back into public hearing of ReWild solar projects. Time is 7:06. First thing I want to go over is, did everyone see the supplemental materials that ReWild has supplied?
No.
Sorry, I was talking before this.
Did it again?
No worries. I have that. Are there any questions we have for ReWild?
That was it.
Did you want to make a presentation on this?
It's up to you guys for the record. My name is Zach Farkas. This is the second time I've been here for the continuation of the planning board meeting for the 3 proposed solar projects that we discussed. We spent about 3 hours 3 weeks ago kind of with an initial presentation. I'm happy to go over any items that are out there that I think I try to provide as kind of conclusive a summary as I could without fully reading those materials. If you recall, I left the meeting with kind of 3 requests from the board. One was to provide formal memorandums from my attorney supporting our 3 waiver requests. The second was to provide a little bit more detail on the proposed or the expected upgrades to the utility lines up Bigelow Hill Road. And then the third one was to provide a little bit more information on what will the project look like after construction and during operation. So that's what I summarized in the letter. The memos are pretty self-explanatory. I thought the attorneys did a pretty good job trying to explain it point by point. The images of the pole line, or the upgraded pole line that I expect Eversource to install up Bigelow Hill Road there was a gentleman here, I don't recognize him in the audience today, but a gentleman came in explaining Hendrix clips and the improvements to the 3-phase line from a single-phase line, etc. So I tried to capture that in the letter for you all. And then finally, there were a couple of links that I provided directly off our website for very similar solar projects that we've developed and constructed in the past. But beyond that, I think the letter was meant to be self-explanatory, but happy to take any questions.
I had a question related to Bigelow, actually all the projects. Is there only one entrance to all of them, each individual?
There's only one entrance to the site from each, for each array.
I have a question though. Is this, for you guys, is this considered one project, 3 projects, 2 projects?
3 projects.
Three.
Yep. Electrically, mechanically, contractually, 3 separate projects.
I'm waiting to hear back from fire and police, but have you considered maybe putting a second entrance in, just in case for some reason the first entrance has an issue for fire safety, let's say it's blocked by something?
We certainly could. As I said at the outset, our goal was minimizing any impact to public ways and access areas, so obviously cutting a separate road would add to that, but certainly Bigelow Hill Road would be easy to add another entrance or exit at the top of the array. for Dort Street East. We're planning the access from the main road used to get to the water treatment facility this way. There's 2 access points with frontage on Bigelow Hill Road that we could drive an access road up. There are some wetlands in this area, if you recall. We're really trying to protect that impact to any wetlands here, so a road would impact
It may
that.
not be needed, I'm just.
It could be done, I guess, is the short answer for all 3.
The effect on Bigelow Hill Road and North Street are the same.
The effect, I guess, would be yes. As in terms of the solar project, whatever effect they would have.
Sure, so, would you like me to?
Yeah, if you want me.
Summary, okay,
For
so.
those that weren't here.
There was a first question that was asked whether the sites were considered one project or multiple projects. It's 3 individual projects. One sited on a tract of land that's about, I'll pull out my notes just so I can keep everything as consistent as possible.
6 acres.
That's an 83-acre parcel up here. The second is what we're calling Dort Street East, 42-acre parcel, and then there's a 38-acre parcel just on the west side of Dort Street. This is what the array looks like. I'm gonna hold these up just because I don't have my easel today. This is what the array looks like on top of that parcel, that first one.
35%.
It's just a little bit over 35%. The access road to Brown is Bigelow Hill Road. Here's a single site entrance into the site that comes up through the center of the array. We've kept a 100-foot buffer off the edge of the parcel, but the road continues up this way. So to answer that first question with a visual, we could continue this access road out here if we wanted to and grab another point of Bigelow Hill Road. That would require us to do more upgrade, more work, more impact. So I thought it'd be more fruitful just to have a single entrance. The second site we're calling Dort Street East. Dort Street here, if you continue up, there's the wastewater treatment facility. Dort Street East is here. Here's the 2 frontage points on Bigelow Hill Road as it works its way up. But basically we have a single access at the southern, southwestern corner of the parcel that comes up and into the center of the site. There's a wetland resource area in this corner that goes off-site to the neighboring parcel. So we've tried to keep a big buffer up here so that we're minimizing any impact to existing wetlands.
So all the access there is through North Street.
Exactly. Final site is Dort Street West. This is the smaller of the 2 projects. Dort Street East access was right here on that previous panel I showed you. Continue a little bit farther up Dort Street. We have the crematorium for the pet cemetery type deal going on up here. But it's a left-hand turn just before you get to the crematorium driveway. That'll come down to a smaller site right in here. And you can see by this satellite image and the others, we're trying to not only pull away from sensitive wetland areas like you can see to the south, but also minimize any type of wetland impact we're coming. That's why we place the arrays where they are. Number 1, to get them as far in on these sites off public ways so they're out of sight, out of mind as possible. And then number 2, balancing the minimum impact to wetland areas. I'll stop there. I talked for a long time.
You mentioned Eversource contracting, so they have to, are these lines that will come out of these arrays a higher voltage than what's on the Nadlock Street and Dort Street right now?
Same voltages. There's the 3-phase power runs up Dort Street right now. It's pretty heavy
Is it
gauge
gonna be the
power.
bundled 3-phase type of thing, like went down Route 12?
Sure. I don't believe that upgrades will be required on Dort Street. That's pretty beefy wire to service the kind of industrial use up there. Bigelow Hill Road does have single phase. I think
Right.
that will be upgraded. That's gonna get upgraded to 3-phase, and my expectation is they'll use, you don't mind if I share
Yes,
this?
that's fine.
My expectation is we'll use that type of Hendrix clip,
Yeah,
is
okay,
usually the
that's
best way.
what that Route 12 had, okay.
This
But
requires.
it's the same voltage level as the 3-phase?
Yep,
but-
and it's just 3-phase, beefier
So
wire.
there's no construction power lines along Dort and Nadlock Street?
I don't think so. I don't think so. That's part of the reason we cited the first sites we were working on were on Dort. Both parcels are zoned industrial. It's obviously in an industrial area. Not many residents in that area at all, so.
Thank you.
Any other questions from the public?
I do, actually. I'm Sharon Batchelder Busher. my family owns a piece of property on the top of Bigelow Hill Road. I have a question. I looked into some sites about the health, problems that may come by living near these sites. And I noted two things that I'd like you to respond to. First of all, I saw on a government site that the impact from these fields is like being impacted with an X-ray. And I'd like to know, first of all, how you feel about that and what your information is. But also, I noted that the government also said that it would be safe to be residing within 1.2 miles of something like this field, especially on Bigelow Hill when it takes in so much of the property. There's a number of us neighbors who live much closer than 1.2 miles. And so I'd like to know information that you have about that, please.
Sure. So first and foremost, none of the equipment that we're specifying here is non-tier 1, I guess would be a way to put it. Nothing that we're using is not already fully tested, fully approved by the Underwriters Laboratory, which is a third-party representative of what's called IEEE, which is electrical requirements, building code, electrical code, etc. So we're not using any homemade appliances, right? These are all solar panels, inverters, racks that are purchased from manufacturers who go through rigorous testing. The second thing is none of this equipment is any different than what residential folks put on their roof when they're building a solar project. So I don't recognize or see any danger to these projects. The only questions, or the most frequent question that we get, is around noise and high frequency noise, and we discussed that in detail.
I remember.
3 weeks ago. Another one that often comes up is electromagnetic frequencies, and there's nothing more impactful in these systems than a regular microwave oven.
Except if I can go a little further in my comments, and that is, a household only has maybe 1 or 2 microwave ovens in their house. We're going to have numerous solar panels, more than would be on a residential place. And again, if you go to get an X-ray, nobody can be in the room with you unless they're shielded. So I'm wondering why you are thinking that this is going to be safe, number one. And number two, the government is saying 1.2 miles is a safe vicinity to be around these and to live there.
So you're referring to the solar modules. There's no moving parts, no frequencies in the solar modules, only the inverters. There's only the same number of inverters for this system. They're on the equipment pad, and there's no impact that anyone has ever found for living near these projects. They've now been installed in very high volume across almost all of Massachusetts for the past 15 years. So projects have been operating for quite a long time.
I understand that, but I wonder why the government posted these things if they weren't significant. I mean, I would think they would be, and the government obviously looked into this matter, and there are tremendous amount of these fields. And you're talking about a huge field on Bigelow Hill Road, and I can't imagine that there isn't going to be some impact health-wise. And I don't think you can guarantee that, can you?
There is going to be no health impact for these.
You guarantee that?
It doesn't matter what I guarantee or not. I'm just giving you my opinion. You asked me what it was. I wouldn't do anything if I thought there was going to be health impact.
I don't happen to agree, but thank you.
Kyle, I was just gonna suggest, that the person commenting share the materials with the board about the government report or source.
If we had known that we needed to, I certainly would have.
You don't have to do it now.
information.
I mean,
But I
just
will.
when it's convenient for you.
Absolutely.
You know, the board isn't, I don't think the board's gonna be voting on this tonight, so just
Okay.
share it as soon as you're able to.
I'll do that for sure, thank you.
Just state your name.
Don Batchelder. Again, Batchelder Family Trust. Just a point of process here. Are we to be directing our comments to you, to him, to individual board members?
Should
Just-
technically go through me,
Okay,
then to, that's how it should go. I do tend to be a little lax on that.
that's
It should.
fine, I just needed to know the process.
Yeah.
Second question along that line is this truly open for any question within this, or?
Any
are you in
question
a
related?
separate- Are you still deliberating as a group there?
So we are just still deliberating on the project as a whole. We haven't approved it, or a site plan or vice
Yep,
versa.
well aware of that.
I believe we're,
You know, I mean, there isn't more.
we are
public
technically
comment except-
continuing the public comment hearing from last time,
Right.
so.
Okay.
Once we close public comment, then we'll have to go into deliberation, then we generally don't take comments. Though generally, again, we tend to not always shut people out, we like to get input. So it's still technically in the public comment section of the public hearing that we transferred from the last meeting, which was the 21st? Okay. Sorry. So yes, we're still in public comment.
And Axel too. Just so everyone's aware, the selectmen have not issued a building permit for this project, just so, right now it's basically just talking about site plan.
Good.
Yes,
Yes, I have a couple questions.
yep, just state your name and then ask questions.
Catherine Sandman. The first question is, has the fire department been advised of this proposal?
I have emailed them, they have not got back to me. I'm probably gonna email Abby and have her forward them. I'm assuming mine are going to spam, because I've never emailed them before.
Okay, because from the research I've been doing, this is a huge fire risk, especially for a rural district like Bigelow Hill. Dordt Street I'm not as concerned about because they're closer to the municipality, but we have a volunteer fire department, they're not very well trained. You would need new equipment. I don't know who would put up the money for that equipment and that training.
Well, I guess I would wait for them to tell us if they feel they need equipment or training. I guess we can't
Well, if you
speak for them.
if you do some research, you'll see that fighting these types of fires in these arrays are very problematic. My other question is, last time when I was speaking, asked about the surveillance for the property, and there's gonna be no video cameras, I heard, and only checked up on the property, what, twice a year, was that correct?
As needed, I believe they said, but I have to have him answer that, I can't speak for them.
Okay, so I live up there and we get a lot of fallen trees. I was walking the road just the other day with my dog and a tree just fell over. They're falling over all over the place.
So
We just had a
you're concerned about
microburst. I'm
trees falling
concerned
on-
about trees falling on these arrays and they don't have any video surveillance equipment and they only plan on checking on the maintenance twice a year.
So from experience, my work has done the solar project on the roof.
Mm-hmm.
All the inverters have, they report to
On the
center.
roof, you said?
Yeah, we have a roof mounted, but it's very large.
I understand, but it's much different from a 35-acre array.
I'm just saying that they have a system that each array reports to a computer offsite. So if, let's say, one of them breaks in the roof, it actually notifies us.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know if they have that, you can answer that.
I'm going through you.
Yeah,
Okay, told
so-
you.
Happy to. You're absolutely right. These systems, whether in the woods or on a roof or anywhere in the desert, all function the exact same way. When I was referring to visiting a site, I was referring to operations and maintenance. Just because there's no security camera does not mean we don't know what's happening on the site. Every single one of these modules is connected to what's called a DAS, a data acquisition system. There's a wireless modem, all that stuff on the equipment pads that shoots out the performance numbers on the system itself. We also have the utility meter, all the electrons that flow through spin the meter. We know with a very, very tight degree of certainty how much power should come off these arrays on every day based on the weather. So you can think about that as another way for us to monitor the system.
What about in the event of a power outage?
In the event of a power outage, it turns off.
It turns off.
The system cannot operate when the power is down anywhere in the system. It's called islanding, and it's not allowed really throughout the United States.
My other concern is hail and microbursts. They just had one in Royalton. It took out a whole couple acres, just like boom, all the trees down, and hail. And I just read about actually Bill told me about this solar farm in Texas that was destroyed by hail. And it's such a large array that they don't intend to fix any of those panels, and they do leak toxic fluid into the ground. And I did notice, and I was looking through this book, your largest appendix is about the watershed. So clearly, you have concerns, as we do, about the watershed up there on Bigelow Hill. And I'm curious, when your team was up there taking all these measurements, can you give me some dates and some times as to when they were there? Because I travel that road every day, 4 times a day, and I didn't see any team of people working up there, so I'm just curious when they were there.
It's all in the reports. When people in there, the reason why the stormwater control report is the biggest is because that's the highest bar that the state of New Hampshire has for us, is to make sure that we don't violate stormwater laws of Massachusetts, of New Hampshire.
Right.
That means that there's a lot of calculations that have to be done. We're showing our work.
Mhm.
That's all. We're showing that.
But I'm not a watershed expert, I can't analyze that. I don't know if this number, if the numbers in here, what they represent. I'm not an analyst. I don't know if they're even your numbers.
We talked about this, sorry.
So,
I believe the state will analyze their portion of this. He still has to go through New Hampshire Department of Environmental Service application and an alteration of terrain, correct?
Exactly.
And the state will take care of that.
and the Conservation Commission?
We have not advised yet on this project, or they have not, I should say.
Have they been contacted?
Yes,
And by you or by them?
both.
Both. And when do you expect to hear from them?
We expect to meet in a couple weeks again, and discuss. We had discussed drafting, they had discussed drafting the letter, making sure that nothing invasive could plant like reintroduce when they do the meadow, etc. Yes, sir.
Again, Don Batchelder. I feel like I need to start at the beginning, so
Yep.
I'm going to. The board functions under the master plan, is that correct? Is that what the planning board functions under?
It's one part of what we function under, yes.
And what was the date of the master plan? When was it last voted on and updated?
2007, and we are currently going through a second update currently.
But it has not been updated.
It has not been updated a second time since 2007.
And does the town, do the people of the town vote on the master plan? Or is it simply a board accepted?
No, I believe the final is basically a public hearing, isn't it, public hearing?
Yeah, that's right. It's not like a town meeting vote, it's a board, it's a document maintained by the planning board.
Okay, well, in going through the revised plan of 2007, in the vision statement, it says the residents and landowners desire to preserve the rural character and sense of identity created by a particular variety of development in Troy. And it lists the historic village, small businesses, homes, etc., along with country roads, expanses of roadless, forested backcountry, and abundant natural resources and recreational opportunities throughout. I kind of feel like, my opinion is that a solar field developing on Bigelow Hill violates the spirit of what the master plan calls for in that regard. And I'll be glad to forward this to you if you wish to have it forwarded, have it all written out here. There are goals and objectives, and each time I go through the goals and objectives, point 2, point 4, objectives 4, it seems like this project violates the character of what was required under the master plan for a rural area. That's just a comment. Are the projects, all three, asking for a variance?
Yes, all three are.
Okay,
And those variances are based off of the percentage of the amount covered. So 10 acres and over, so we have a solar ordinance, I guess go back, master plan has a vision.
Yep.
Ordinances help set the bar, so to speak. So there is a solar ordinance that does allow certain things. The idea is it works with the master plan. The master plan is your whole view. Ordinances are kind of your steps to get here and there.
And maybe
So the solar ordinance says anything 10 acres and over is capped at 35% of lot coverage. If I remember correctly, Bigelow Hills 83 acres.
Is that table?
Yes,
Yes, I believe so. I believe that's the most common one. I can't see
Yeah.
from here.
Yeah, it's. from what I printed
So,
off the town
if
site.
I remember correctly, Bigelow Hills 83 acres. He's asking for 32 acres to be covered, which is 37.7%. So he's 2.7% over the allowed 35%. So he's asking for a variance for that. The two Dort Street locations, I believe he's asking a variance to view them as combined. You have to correct me if I'm misspeaking.
I think I'm asking for the variance, part of my explanation was to view them as combined.
Yeah.
But the smaller project, what we're calling Dort West, is not requesting that variance, just the two larger projects.
Jack?
Or if I could just clarify, there are actually waivers to the provisions of the zoning ordinance that the planning board will handle, not a zoning variance.
They're called conditional use.
The granting of a variance, is there a hardship that's being shown?
So, yeah, well, okay, so this is technically a conditional use permit, if I'm correct. But you can, so basically, he has to prove a hardship. He has to prove that it does not violate the spirit of the ordinance, i.e., you know, changing it so far out, it doesn't even fit at all, you know, the view of the region. He has to prove economic hardship for whatever reason. Bring it down to like, let's bring it down to like a house level. Your house is, let's say, right on the edge of the road, you want to put a porch. You can't because it's too close to the road. You could apply and say, hey, hardship, I can't move the house. I wouldn't be violating the spirit of anything in the region because it's a house and porch like everyone else. It's taking that same idea, you bring it to a larger project. He feels that the 35% is too restrictive and it will cost him financial hardship. So the burden is on him to prove that. I hope that clears it up for you, the process.
It does. Again, maybe I'm too literal, but to me, asking for a variance, you already know that it doesn't fit.
Correct, that's the idea behind it. You know it doesn't fit, so you're asking for either a waiver or conditional use
So
permit.
we are all assuming that this just doesn't fit up there. Yes? No? Because a variance is being asked for, so
For the
we all
size
agree
of
that it's not.
for the size of the use, the size of the piece being put on, not for the whole project, as an
Okay,
idea being there.
so let me ask about that then. Under the rural district of the zoning,
Yep.
there are 9 things listed there
Mhm.
under permitted uses.
Yep.
Which of the 9 things would he be asking for? For permitted uses?
All right, what page does it say that?
It says page 8, Article 7, Rural District, Troy zoning ordinance.
All right, all we have is solar ordinance.
So the, where solar is allowed is in a different section of the
I was just gonna
ordinance
say there's some different.
called supplemental provisions, which is Article 12.
Yep.
And it explains
Got that?
which districts allow solar energy systems. And the rural district allows utility scale solar through conditional use permit. In my copy, that's on page 16 of So, I mean, that could be like a cleanup thing we do the next time we look at the ordinance, is make a mention.
I was gonna say it, there's no mention
Yeah, you
of
just
one
have,
referencing to the other,
yeah,
so
it's,
they kind of argue against each other.
I don't think so.
Well, if it's not mentioned in one, it needs to be mentioned in the other, otherwise it's a contradiction.
I hear what you're saying.
I'm glad you hear what I'm saying, but it is a contradiction.
Does it say it's not permitted? Is that what you mean by contradiction? One is saying it's permitted and one
One's saying it isn't. I'm reading right at the top here, in the rural district, ... following purposes only. Right at the top, and then it lists 9 things. And my original question was, which of those 9 uses is he asking a variance for?
Okay.
And you're telling me solar. It's not in here, nor is it referenced to see an addendum. So the law works on minutia. It works on word for word. I mean, go to the Supreme Court, they discussed what does of mean.
Yeah. Glad we're not there, right?
Yeah, exactly. So I'm simply saying it's not referenced here.
Yeah.
So therefore, it's not an only use.
Kyle, I think this might be a question for Carol to.
I believe so. I believe we covered this, and it was determined that because it was referenced in the solar ordinance and the table of permitted uses, we were covered.
But it ought to be referenced here.
That's right, absolutely.
Carol,
It's like a
Yes,
have you been following?
yes, I have been, and the answer to the question or the comment is that the fact that solar is not referenced in the rural district that's not really relevant, because the supplemental provisions section, that's where you typically put things that apply town-wide and are not limited to one district or another district.
So rather than referencing each district individually, you put
Exactly.
a supplemental to cover multiple.
That's deceptive.
Would it make sense to maybe add them in just for clarity? I mean, it's
No,
really
I
just
mean, you
repeating
could,
itself, but it's just repeating itself though at that point, correct?
Can I make a
No,
comment?
I mean, it wouldn't hurt to do that, but then the question would come up, would you want to do that with every other thing that's in supplemental provisions that applies townwide? I just think it just adds a little more burden to the ordinance, that's my opinion.
Makes sense.
You had a question?
Well, what I'm saying is if you specified some things, I think you would want to be consistent and specify everything, especially when it impacts so much of the property that is in this area. This is not just a light bulb, this is something, that has a lot of impact, and I think you need to specify. If you're gonna specify for 9 things, you should do 15 then, if that's appropriate.
I think Carol's point too, and I think we've run into this before, it becomes not only redundant but cumbersome.
I'm also understanding that this is how it has generally been done in most towns, and not whether it's right or wrong, but this seems to be the standard in which this has been done.
And you kind of have like the umbrella is that piece in the back that kind of covers multiple regions, and then you have specifics to each. I do see his point, it does seem like it's not one, why is it? It's not specifically stated in them.
Anyway, I'd like you to consider my point there.
Any other public comment?
I do, go ahead. I don't want to dominate.
It's okay. I had meant to open with this comment, and sorry, because at the last meeting you said that you would try to put a board sign up on the Commons saying there was a meeting here tonight, and nothing ever got done about that, so. I did go door to door to a lot of my neighbors and people on West Hill, but people are pretty up in arms about this, I want you to know. People in West Hill especially, because they're gonna have to look out and see this array. especially the poor Levitt's at the blueberry farm. People come there for that view. It's gonna be destroyed. I don't know what it's gonna do for your view tax either. All your view taxes that you collect from all those wealthy folks on West Road. I don't know.
Good point.
Yeah. And I also read that it's gonna reduce our property values by about 30%, and we already have like the worst property values in all of the state. This is why we have such, folks coming in here trying to, make you some money.
My property just doubled.
There's someone behind you raising their hand?
Yeah, I came into this late. I'm just curious. I don't ask a question I won't know, but why was it Bigelow Hills selected for this particular site?
Right.
Excuse me, sir, your name?
Alan
Your last name?
Burrington.
Thank you.
Through you, Mr. Chairman?
Yes, you can answer.
Yeah, so I explained at the last meeting, I'm gonna turn this to you to see it, the Nadnock Street substation
Yeah.
is right here.
Yeah, I know where it is.
Yep, so the Bigelow Hill Road site is quite close from a circuit mile standpoint from the Nadnock Street substation. When I first started looking at different areas across the state of New Hampshire to develop solar, the first thing I look at is electrical infrastructure. The Nadnock is quite a substantial substation considering the amount of land and load that it serves. It's also scheduled for the electrical infrastructure to get up here. But from my standpoint, it's a very well studied property because I'm not impacting any views. Nobody's gonna see it, nobody's gonna hear it, nobody's gonna smell it once it's built.
I'm gonna see it.
I have a
I'm
couple
gonna
of
hear it.
questions, but
Yeah.
You're welcome to ask if you.
how much land do we have around the recycling center? That's the town of Troy's.
I have no idea.
Yeah. Where is it? Yeah.
No, that's the waste, what, that's
That's
the
the
source.
wastewater.
Off the
What's
corner.
Yeah. Just below Quarry Pond.
I think it's off the map.
Yeah.
Or
Yeah, it's down by the election.
But as a crow flies to that substation, it's not that far.
Yeah.
Certainly, I don't need to apply to the only 3 good properties or good from a solar
And
development.
how's that gonna impact the conservation, so to speak, with the wildlife?
There's an impact to the wildlife, that's what we talked a lot about last meeting, that there's 32 acres that are gonna come from forested to a meadow. There's gonna be solar panels there, there's gonna be a fence around it, there's gonna be impact to the wildlife.
And what's the payback? What's the initial cost for the town of Troy?
There's no cost for the town of Troy, from a dollar standpoint. I pay for everything, I pay for all the utility upgrades, I pay for the construction, the maintenance, et cetera, et
Well, there's
cetera.
nothing for free in this world, so somebody's getting paid somewhere.
I'm selling the power, but it has nothing to do with the town of Troy.
The citizens will just pay with our help.
Yes. So, just referencing your 35 acres, there's gonna be a fence around that 35 acres?
Yes, sir.
And how much of the wildlife is gonna be able to access that 35 acres through the fence?
It's where I was like, there's a recording of the pond.
It's hard to see, but if you come up, there's a blue line, dark blue line, heavy blue line around the array.
Yeah,
That's the
I'm
fence.
well aware of the property.
Okay.
I've
Question?
walked it hundreds of times. I'm asking how much of that 35 acres that will be fenced will be accessible to wildlife?
It's a closed off fence, there's a 6 to 8 inch wildlife gap underneath it, but the fence is there per National Electric Code to make sure I keep people out and keep it
Right,
safe.
and that's my point. So you're taking 35 acres of munchies away from wildlife, and there's no wildlife impact? I beg to differ.
I didn't say there was none, I said there would be.
Yeah, there's a huge difference. There's a huge difference there.
Would you think of wildlife reforms, other wildlife are gonna flourish? Rabbits, bees. It's a taking, just to point that out.
Another question about the road.
The what?
The road.
Yep.
Improvements will be made, beginning at John Lee Mattinen's property,
Mm-hmm.
further on up.
1,200 feet, I believe is what he said.
Right. Of that, John mentioned a stone culvert, and he's correct, there's a stone culvert there. It's historic, been there a long time. Is that going to be wrecked?
I've left it as an open item right now to be discussed with the board on the upgrades that would be required of Bigelow Hill Road of Maine. That's why I asked for a waiver, because I didn't want to imply that I was just gonna rebuild 1,200 feet of road unless that was the direction the board and the neighbors wanted me to take. So it's currently open for consideration. I'll do whatever's asked of me with respect to the road.
So it's going to require, to get the heavy equipment in there, some change to that road surface, correct?
Whether it's permanent or temporary, there has to be something.
Well, it will be permanent regardless if you make a change to it, because it's simply a logging road in some places now where it's a single track. You have been up there, I take it. And you know that you cannot get even a motorcycle to pass a car there. So putting a piece of heavy equipment through there, you're gonna have to cut back quite a bit.
If I have to, depending again on what the board, what the fire department, what the police department would like to require of me.
You had a question?
I believe it was determined last time that if he is allowed to do this, he must upgrade the road to a class 5. Wasn't that determined last time? I asked that question several times, and finally I believe you found the ordinance in the book at the end of the meeting that yes, it must be brought up to class 5. You cannot build anything off a class 6 road.
That's not true.
Yeah, it is true. We determined that last time.
No.
And you said to me it would be brought up to a class 5 road if they were gonna be able to build
Yes,
this.
with the surface not being determined yet, whether it's payment or.
I understand that, but still, class 5.
Yes.
So he can't just leave it like it is.
I think he was
can't
referring to
just
the
leave it like
impact
it
on the
is.
culvert.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, I'm talking
My
about
specific
the
question
whole
was the
road.
culvert, but again, the whole road. And I guess it's open that it's going to either be gone or not be gone, depending on what the board
I think
decides.
we would make sure he keeps the culvert, because I assume it's for drainage, as
It's a river.
before.
It's a river.
Yeah, it's a small stream, about 3 feet wide.
Gentleman behind you?
I'm Matthew Hooley. I have two questions from two different sides. One is that Vice Chairman of the Historical Commission, someone had brought up that there was a historical value there. Have you approached the Historical Society asking any questions or?
We've alerted the Division of Historical Resources for New Hampshire for all 3 projects, and we've received back our project
Oh,
notification.
I might have misspoke. Have you come to the local historical society and asked?
We have not.
Okay, are you planning on doing that?
I was not aware of a local historical society, but I'm happy to. If you guys recommend it, I'd be happy to.
Well, as a vice chairman, I would recommend that you
Very good.
bring. The second side is, I heard that there was a health concern. Is that the health officer, can you kind of, and I'm sorry if I missed, I know you were saying something, but kind of go over that with me so I just make sure there's no health issues?
Sure. So there's no components in here that have provided any impacts to human health. These are the same components that have been used for all solar projects throughout the country. They continue to be tested by third-party labs, and there's procedures for this electrical equipment, just like there is all electrical equipment.
So there's no federal insight on that? Like, I mean, my understanding is there is some concern with the health of humans and animals with projects like this. I'm just trying to see your company, what research you've done into that,
Yep.
and if you could provide that.
So the research we've done is we limit all of our projects to what we call tier 1 components.
Mhm.
So components that have been tested and are approved and are on available vendor lists throughout the country. We don't manufacture any of our own equipment. We don't utilize any equipment that's aftermarket. We don't utilize any used equipment. All the equipment is purchased specifically for this project from the
So
manufacturer.
you guys have done your due diligence.
I've done my due diligence on solar, and as I related earlier, there's nothing that I've done over the past 10 years in developing and constructing and operating these projects that leads me to believe there's any health risks.
Okay, and so, I think my last question is, I understand you've been doing it for 10 years and stuff like that. My grandmother smoked for 100 years before they realized smoking was bad. And so, with concerns from the public on the health issues and them bringing up some valid points and some valid research that's been done, I'm just trying to see what that counter is. Just because you said you've had 10 years experience, no disrespect to you, sir, but I would like kind of some data saying, okay, this is where you get your opinion from and your.
Well, if the board would be interested, I could certainly provide supplemental materials similar in the way that I did at the last meeting, to provide more background on testing that's related to what we call the critical components, the modules, the inverters. The racks, I think, are made of aluminum and steel, so we can focus on the modules and inverters if that's something you guys are interested in.
So, no disrespect to anyone. If the board allows that, that's great. As a deputy health officer, I'm asking.
Yep.
So, which I work for a different department, I'm duly appointed by the selectmen and the state. So, if you could get me that information, I'd appreciate it.
Awesome. Can you give me your card at the end of the meeting? So
Absolutely.
we can get exactly what you want.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Is the service line gonna be overhead or underground?
Overhead.
So you're gonna be running poles?
The project on Bigelow Hill Road right now takes about 6 months to construct, as we discussed at the last meeting. So that would be the ballpark number that I communicate to you from when the first truck arrived, would be about 6 months.
That's a long time. Well,
And
hopefully I'll be there.
obviously the road wouldn't be shut down. I don't have any rights. My contractors would have no rights to shut down the road. Everything would come up the road and drive onto the site. We wouldn't be allowed to walk the road.
You are impacting a huge area for environmental, trees and everything. That's, how many acres is that altogether?
The 3 projects.
Yes. You're cutting down all those trees, you're
32.
clearing the land. And think what that's, when we came to Troy, we wanted country, and you're gonna just ruin country.
It's just a little bit over 60 acres total.
That's a huge amount to clear cut.
I agree.
Think of it, it's gonna be clear cut.
And that's exactly why I try to target properties that had already been significantly cut and try to stay away from sites that were virgin forest sites.
But it still impacts our whole hillside
I'm
there.
not saying it doesn't, I'm just giving you the explanation of how I look at the sites.
Gentleman in the back.
Question. Hi, my name is Baxton. I'm a New Hampshire Sheriff Baxton. Are those copies of the plan, those things with binders and everything, are those free for people to take?
No.
So we can't.
Not from the building.
Not from the building, but
If you come in during
do
the
that-
week, Abby can get you copies of stuff.
Cool, that's fine. But so like if someone wanted to come in and view that, they could do that.
Yeah,
Okay.
those are open to the public,
Cool.
just can't pass the door.
Yeah, that's fine. Next question is, these are taxable structures, I believe?
Yes, sir.
Okay. That was it.
Thank you.
I got a question. What about 35 years down the road, what's gonna happen to all the panels?
Sure. So we talked about this again too. There's a concept called decommissioning.
Yeah.
The town of Troy and the state of New Hampshire require decommissioning plans and decommissioning bonds to be put in place. As part of the application materials, we had a licensed engineer put together a decommissioning estimate. Basically, the contractor, how much would it cost to take it apart the day after it was built? All those costs and line items are outlined, and then they're escalated out from using an inflation number for 25, 35 years. Okay, that comes up to a number, it's quite a large number. That money is bonded, meaning that it's with a surety. We pay a certain amount of money, so that $300,000 we use as an example is available if I don't deliver on my ability or my promise or my commitment to remove the site, remove the project from the site. So I have, in my lease agreements, I have a requirement with the landowners that at the end of the term, I have to remove the project. I think there's a requirement in the bylaw at the end of the operating term, I have to remove the project. And there's often in a tax agreement, a requirement that I have to remove the project. Those are contractual requirements, but 35 years is a long time. So what happens if the solar company isn't there? The bond is there.
Can I get your name, sir, for the minutes?
Dan Kivela.
Did you get that?
Did you say that again, sir?
Dan Kivela.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I have a question for you. My husband worked for large corporations, and every time they built a huge plant or whatever, and they had to move or change something in the property, they reforested that property. In other words, they tried to replant so it made it look like in the coming years that wildlife and aesthetically it would be pleasing again. Is that something that you plan to do? After you decommission everything, are you going to reforest this?
It's not part of our plan right now, and by reforesting, I imagine replanting or planting seedling straps of pine trees, etc. Is that what you're referring to?
I am, or hardwoods. I'd like to know why you haven't added that to part of your proposal and your expenses. Because in order to ruin things, I would think that you'd want to somehow replace it. I mean, it's a huge piece of property, like my mom said.
Yes, ma'am.
Do you
Part of
have,
that comes down to the private landowner may not require them to do that.
but again, we're requiring so many things from him already. Why wouldn't we require him to replant the forest that he's taking away? I would think that that would be not only profitable for everybody who has property there, but I think it's just respectful.
He's
basically.
farm too.
Gentlemen in the back.
Speaking as a representative of my family, we would rather have meadows planted. That's why we're not doing that, is speaking from our family.
Okay, thank you.
Can you ask Mr. Farkas, how come he chooses to lease this land instead of buy it?
Do you wish to answer?
I can't force a landowner to do anything. These landowners have had these landowners have had this land in their ownership, family ownership often for years and years and years, and selling something is final. I own it forever after that. This is a scenario where the landowner gets basically the best of both worlds.
Right, and they're left with what's left, and you can just walk away.
Your words.
Well, that's exactly right.
Any other public comment?
I would like the board to consider having, instead of overhead wires put in, to have underground put in, particularly because there's one pole, two poles. I think there are only 3 or 4 poles.
So the issue with that is Eversource is gonna do the upgrades.
Yeah.
And it's gonna do what they feel best. We can't.
Well, upgrade, does that mean extending? Because the poles don't go all the way up to that property. Isn't that correct, or am I wrong?
Both of your statements are correct. Upgrading or extending is the same thing. The interconnection work is out of my scope. It's in Eversource's scope, and that's due to agreements with Eversource, PSNH, and different municipalities. I'm not allowed to install poles or run wire in public ways. So that's their job. As the chairman pointed out, they have a specification that they follow. I tried to duplicate a number of that specification in the supplemental materials letter, so you guys could get a feel for what I think is gonna go in there. But ultimately, it's up to Eversource's requirement, their spec. And I don't think Eversource is gonna wanna run a mile of underground.
Well, I'm absolutely sure that's true, but we don't wanna have wires stuck out in the middle of a rural area.
I'm not, it's the exact, the wires are there, right? There's only about 4 or 5 wires that would be added along that 1,200 feet we're considering upgrading, but the wires are already above ground on Big Hill Road.
Eversource took out 3 poles about 4 years ago. So it stops a lot sooner than it used to, because it used to go up into White Oaks Field. It doesn't do that anymore.
Stops at your property.
No, it does not, it goes further, it goes past the brook.
Unfortunately, though, we have no say over that, no matter what we want. As far as a public roadway goes, the only point, once it turns into private property, party leases, then we could maybe specify underground. As far as a public roadway with Eversource, they're gonna do what they feel is most cost effective and efficient for them.
Understood.
So he has been very kind of provide examples of what it should look like and give us some answers. I think if you have more questions about that, I think you have to call Eversource directly.
Don't have a question about it, just a comment. To me, it's a further reason for not doing the project on Bigelow Hill. I have no problem with Dork Street, it's not rural. That's not how it's zoned. But Bigelow Hill is rural, and it just doesn't seem to fit to have a whole bunch of wires going through a woodland road. So that would be just another reason for not accepting that part of the project. I'm totally for the things down on Dork Street. Bless them. Great. That's what zoning says.
Mr. Burlington brought up an alternate site possibly that the town owns. Is there another site that could be considered other than Bigelow Hill? So that he could still have his 35-acre array and we could still have our woodlands?
That is a decision they make, we cannot tell them where to go.
They, mean the company?
Yes.
I see.
Unless Troy decided to put our own there, or to contract someone. We can't tell them to move properties. We can answer on the ones he's presented to us. If he chose to present one from Quarry Road, he could do that.
Yeah.
Was the decision made solely based on distance to the substation?
It was based on a number of them. The first one was the recent change in law at the state level in New Hampshire that is, use your word, incentivizing or promoting this type of development. That change happened over the summer. Then we started looking at electrical utilities first, and then I started looking at towns that have solar bylaws. So in this town, in March of this year, the solar bylaw was recently revised to tell me exactly how the town wanted projects designed from a setback standpoint, from a lot coverage standpoint, from a et cetera, you guys have read the bylaw. So I overlaid that, the electrical stuff with the bylaw stuff, with just visually seeing it, and then reached out to a number of landowners. And these are the 3 landowners that hired me to work for them. And I think that that's about the max that that substation can handle without material impacts, material costs that are beyond my control to be able to afford. So I kind of look at it.
I'm kind of just asking outside the box here. I'm thinking of land that the town of Troy owns, and one of the sites that I'm thinking of right now is where the Troy softball field is right now. It doesn't get used at all, and it's wide open. And I don't know how many acres of land is down there, but if it's just going to be run overhead, there's poles in place already. It would be a little bit more expensive, I think, anyway.
I'm sure there's dozens of reasonable sites, and it certainly comes down to subjective opinion, which one are better.
Well, the reason why I say the Troy ball field is that it's wide open. There's no trees. Nobody uses it anymore.
It's not up to me.
It's empty space.
Hi, Matt Hooligan, cemetery trustee.
Change your hat.
The ball field is actually cemetery property, but probably won't be used for 100 years. And that's something that the cemetery trustee.
So we're good for 35.
Yeah. So I just wanted to point that out.
Just saying.
The other thing is, I guess I had a question, like a point of order.
Great Hailstones, yeah, baseball.
My understanding is that you're quoting the bylaw that passed in March. So I would suggest the board table this because the bylaw is not legally in effect.
Yes, it is. It was voted on at town meeting.
Town meeting needs to be ratified tomorrow.
The
Which means it's-
budget at town meeting.
Huh?
Only the budget.
Only the budget at town meeting.
My understanding is the whole thing, so that was
No,
just,
no, it's only the budget, we're only re-ratifying the current budget, and whatever we voted on back in March is basically saying, yes, this is what the town wanted.
So all
It should last
your
maybe 5
petitions
minutes
and
total.
zoning stuff, anything went forward, passed. The only thing that did not pass at town meeting in March was the budget, yearly budget due to a missed date on paperwork filed to the state.
For the DRA portal.
alright, I'm just going off the information that I was given by the town administrator, so I may be wrong, so I apologize.
So, what's the acreage at the Troy ball field? Anybody know?
80 acres, just under.
80 acres.
There you go.
But once again, that's the cemeteries.
So after 35 years, you don't have to put grass seed back.
The recycling center was, I think it's 50 acres is what, if I'm reading the map right, on top of that, but the monitoring was, that's a monitoring site there too, so you can't.
Yeah.
We already looked into doing that as well. The only other property that the town, we don't own, but the state asked us to take, charge of it is the old Troy Mill, south, where the cleanup, Brownsfield cleanup site is. There's like 100 and something acres over there. But once again, there's no poles, no substation, no utilities
that's-
off of that area.
You know, there's been some discussion of the water sewer treatment plant getting involved.
Pardon me?
So there was some discussion on the water sewer treatment plant, maybe possibly doing something to power those homes.
Yeah, our own PPA for that.
So am I hearing you right, that you're considering more solar arrays on town property in addition to this?
We don't consider anything. These are options brought up by people here.
Okay, because it sounded like
Again.
you just said,
The selectmen have been approached several times about using town property.
uh-huh,
We've asked people to give us a proposal.
I see,
They never came back.
okay.
So there's options out there, but
So, ReWild never asked to use town property, they just went directly to the private landowners, I'm guessing.
Which is their right.
With your, I understand, yeah, we spoke on the phone, I know how he did this, it made sense, he's got Google Maps.
Gentlemen in the way back?
Richard,
It's
I'm
okay.
sure that, this is on, this whole thing that's not allowed to leave the building, available, I'm assuming is in a PDF form somewhere.
Yes,
Okay.
we have a PDF, so if you need, she can share.
So in order to make it more available, is there a way that it could be like attached to the meeting minutes as like an appendix, so like when someone comes to read the meeting minutes, and they wonder what we're talking about, they have context,
I
so
think we had
it's.
an issue with the size of it, but we have to get back to you on
Well,
that.
okay, well, just cause like the closer it is attached to it, the more context people have, the more they're gonna be able to understand what's going on, because, you know, that's the only thing is.
We have no problem with that, I just think there's an issue of how much the webpage can do.
It's a lot of information.
What,
Yeah.
300.
what's this solar field gonna supply? What does that encompass as far as electricity for the town?
So I'm not selling any electricity to the town at this point. I haven't sold the electricity to anyone yet. You mean like what's the comparable amount of electricity we're providing?
Yeah.
you didn't slam the door, just wanna point that out, the door slammed.
We weren't blaming him.
That'd be my job.
Some people, they think the door, people walking leaving mad, and they're not. The door slammed shut, sorry. We're working on it.
Try to solve the door.
Alright, so
Question for this one.
So the question was about how much power is this array providing, and it's the equivalent of about 3,000 homes worth. I know it's a hard thing to articulate, but that's how we do it.
You had a question, sir?
Now that 3,000 homes, is that gonna be 3,000 homes in Troy?
So we
No.
sell the power to the utility.
Yep.
Oh,
Right, we're a power plant, we're just the same as Seabrook, we sell the electrons that we produce to the utility. And sure,
And
certainly
just to
those
be-
electrons are used locally, right, but that's how it works.
Yeah, just to be clear, that's a state rule, right, that,
so,
like the state only allows you to sell that to the
Well, I mean,
utility.
certainly anyone could put solar in their roof,
Right, but as far as this size solar project,
that's right.
so what's the real benefit for the town of Troy?
The benefit to the town of Troy, the only benefit technically has from town of Troy would be what's called the pilot, which in lieu of taxes, they pay a pilot payment, which I think he threw a number, what was the number, please?
$110,000.
Yep, so that was the kind of, we talked about 3 benefits, right? We talked about the first big one being taxes. So it's about $4 million over the 35 years that I pay in taxes to the town of Troy for these projects. About $110,000 a year, making it clear that's a discussion I had with the Board of Selectmen, not with the Planning Board, and generally it doesn't happen until after the project's approved. The second benefit is electricity savings. So 20.8 million kilowatt hours is the equivalent of about 3,000 houses, right? When I sell that to the utility, they give me something called a net metering credit. It's like a coupon. I sell that coupon to municipalities across the state of New Hampshire for a discount. And based on market, it's about $315,000 in electricity savings a year that municipalities would get. These projects are too big for the town of Troy. I don't know what the town of Troy's electricity bill is, but whatever it is, you would expect something in the range of 10% discount. So if they spent $100,000 a year, they'd save 10 grand. If they spent $1 million a year, they'd save 100 grand. It's probably somewhere in the middle, if the town of Troy wanted to do it.
Sharon Batchel, the brochure again. I'm wondering, as a board, are you thinking of this as a package? I know there were 3 proposals. Are you thinking of this as a package, or are you going to vote separately on each of these areas?
You vote on each application separately.
So each
We're
one
kind of
is,
presenting it as all together.
so if, let me get this straight. So you can vote on each one separately, whether it's a go or not.
Correct.
But you have to agree that it's a package because of the proposal, correct?
No, we're taking it as all at once for a streamlined process, basically is what it is probably. He chose to present all 3 at once.
I've applied separately though, so I didn't speak up. Each one of those piles is a different project. They're all, I think the first question of the night was, is this 1 project or 3?
I understood
It's 3
that.
projects, so in effect, 1 could be rejected and the other 2 could go forward, vice versa.
And that's what I'm asking the board, if they're going to continue doing this, or are they, for just logistics' sake, going to put it all together? And because I think it makes a huge difference.
We can't, because of simple application, we can't put them together.
But it's 1 project.
It's not, it's 3
It's 3
separate.
3
projects.
separate projects.
So just to
Let's just
clarify,
remove the project idea. I have 3 applications. I can only deal with each application as an individual.
So you could
No
reject
matter what the
2.
project is, I have 3 separate applications.
And that's what I wanna make sure is in the minutes, that it's 3 separate.
Yeah, and
decisions.
they are listed on the minutes, and they are as A, Bigelow Hill Road, B, Dorch Street, C, Dorch Street number 2. So they
Correct.
are separated here.
Yes,
As a public hearing, we're discussing 3 at the same time.
okay. I just
But
wanted to
as
make that.
individuals, they are 3 separate applications, so decisions will be based individually on each.
Thank you for that clarification.
No problem.
I'm gonna clarify my question too. If one of these should fail, does that stop the other 2? Or
Fail.
any comment, like if
Just
one of
define
them was
fail.
voted down, I guess, by the board, would that affect any of the other projects?
It would not.
That was kind of the question. I had asked if it was 3 or.
Yep, they're separate,
Like all-
mechanical, electrical, financial, contractual, they're all separate, and reiterating what the chairman said. We just tried to present them individually, but together, because obviously, we're asked, a lot of them have commonalities.
Sure.
And certainly, I think, it might not be incorrect to say the only projects that we've discussed specifically is Bigelow Hill Road.
I think your hand was up first.
Yeah, so it's clear that no one's here to object to the Dorch Street installation, but everyone here is here to object to the Bigelow Hill installation. So just that's noted.
Not all
Is
of
that
us,
true?
I'm here for information, so.
Oh, okay, I misspoke. I'm one person, two people actually. Mr. Landry is also here. But most of us are here to object.
Could you just ask for clarification, the Bigelow Hill project? So they would be putting transmission lines all the way from the corner of Monadnock Street right up to Bigelow Hill to the top, and I'm assuming then from Monadnock Street to the substation. So Eversource would have to upgrade all of that along there?
I believe is what he said, but I'll have him answer that.
So there's three-phase power that currently runs down Monadnock and then up Dort, like that. And it continues in this feeder line, it continues up this way. Single-phase power runs from this corner you just described up. You use the word transmission, I'm just gonna switch it to distribution, right? We're gonna upgrade the line that runs from Monadnock Street up to the site entrance off Bigelow Hill Road. Excuse me, I said we. The Eversource is gonna do it for us, but I've requested Eversource do it. So they're gonna take down the existing poles that have the overhead single phase and that have the Comcast or whatever the cable service is. They're gonna take that wire down, and they're gonna put up what I think is gonna be something similar to that three-phase Hendrix clip. They could do the T, but I think it's much more robust and much less impact to do it that way.
So the impact is not gonna be just from Lematine and on, it's going to be the entirety of Bigelow Hill Road.
For Eversource's portion, yes.
But still part of the project. Because
In
he
a way.
can't, it wouldn't do him any good to build a solar array if he didn't have a way of getting that energy to.
Maybe he likes throwing money away.
I would
Unfortunately,
assume
we can't do anything with, if Eversource needs to upgrade, they need to upgrade, we don't have much say in that. I think the only place we have say, anything Eversource does, is tree trimming on certain roads, which is what, the scenic roads?
Right, so it will be a taller pole, and it will require more trimming.
Yeah, it's just, that's
It
my
has an
point.
impact, yes.
That's my
It
point,
impacts.
and the town who live in that roadway needs to know that it's not just up at the end. Poor suckers up at the end have to deal with it. No, they're all gonna be dealing with it.
Was Eversource ever in contact with you that they were gonna upgrade Bigelow Hill Road's, lines and poles? If this doesn't happen, I mean, are they planning to do that upgrade? Do you have any
If they ever
knowledge?
plan to, they typically do not notify us.
Okay, but,
The only time I've noticed this board, I've talked to them, I guess they notify selectmen, that's what Curtis just said. The only two times I've seen Eversource ever come to us was for tree trimming on scenic roads and for a site plan for the Monadnock substation they're putting in. Other than that, anything they do, they may notify the select board what they're doing, but they're not required to come here. If they say anything as a courtesy, but they're not required to, and typically we never hear from them.
so this didn't, when he was talking about traffic and putting in these sites, he wasn't adding, I would think, all the Eversource trucks that are going to be pulling out the poles and putting them back in and extending. Is that true?
It's all part of the same project to me,
Yeah.
so I was not ignoring anything.
So you were adding that component into how much traffic and how long it would be congested?
Yeah, I mean, we might be kind of semantically missing each other. Construction traffic is one thing. I, from the very beginning, said like building a house, like building a Walmart, like building a solar
Correct.
project. Construction is impactful and it's negative and nobody likes it. After that, I consider traffic recurring traffic. The recurring traffic that I'm going to introduce is 1 or 2 pickup trucks, 1 or 2 or 3 times a year.
But I don't think you maybe understood my question. In your impact of the traffic on that road, did you take into consideration Eversource's traffic to remove the poles, put new poles in, and extend it?
I take into consideration all the construction traffic when I say the construction
So that's a
is a
yes.
nuisance. Yes,
Thank you.
absolutely.
Thank you.
Curious question, talking about scenic roads, is Bigelow Hill a scenic road?
I don't believe
I
it
don't
is.
believe it is.
I think it's a lot of West Hill.
Well, West Hill and,
What's scenic about
South
West Hill
Street
Road?
actually was.
They can't
So-
see anything from West Hill
Then,
Road.
tree trimming is whatever, Eversource.
Those are roads that at some point the town voted as being scenic, whether it could
Oh,
be due
my
to
goodness.
stone walls, views at one point. It could have, some of them were voted in so long ago, there may have been no trees, they may have been scenic at one point.
Bigelow Hill certainly was scenic and still is. It was the old coach road that goes all the way to Dublin. Lots of old stone.
I think there's 5
Dwellings.
streets in Troy.
Yeah, we should get a hold of the list. The primary influence is tree trimming or moving stone walls. There's like a public hearing process like this for anyone seeking to make those sort of changes. So that would come, for example, from Eversource, if they were.
That was one of the only times I ever had them come to this board was for tree trimming on those roads. And basically it was, we gotta trim the lines. You need permission, here's what we're doing, and a public hearing like this. People living in the streets came down, lost them for it because getting rid of trees around power lines, no one's powers off them, in theory. When those roads became scenic and voted, I do not know, or made the conditions at the time. Bigelow Hill is not one of those.
So, quick question, those of you that live on Bigelow Hill, how often do you guys lose power?
I'm off grid.
My trees took it out twice over the last 2 big storms.
Actually, very seldom till the last couple of years.
Yeah, I took it out for probably 3 or 4 days. Well, a big oak tree on my property fell across this past storm and took it out for 3, we couldn't even plow the road, so. People were going through the park to get over there, so 3 or 4 days, but generally speaking, the big ice storm, not at all, maybe 45 minutes. But that other big spring storm 2 years ago, same thing, like maybe a day. So.
The reason why I'm asking is, I think with the upgrades and everything with those lines, it probably helped to let the power not going out as often. I'm just kinda-
And also, I think that power comes from this, the Nandock Street, isn't it? Yeah, substation, so it's a short run, which we're fortunate.
Any other public comment?
I think that the health, Mr. Poole, is that your
Deputy
name?
Health Officer.
Deputy, excuse me. Should definitely look into the health aspects of this for us, because there, if you look at one side, they'll say there's no negative effects from electromagnetic frequencies. Well, on the other hand, your house isn't worth as much if it's near a power line, because we know that it does affect us physically. And it affects your appliances and your houses and all kinds of things. And it's gonna affect the wildlife up there especially. So I just think that we should also consider the physical effects it's gonna have on the entire town, close to that substation.
You gave him your card.
Yeah, yeah. So when it comes to the health part, I was asking because I heard that there was concern. That is part of my job description. And so what I can do is take this, evidence, put it together, and then have it for record. My section of town doesn't deal with this side. You know what I mean? Because this is a board, that is voted by the people and a standalone board. So, it's more for if 10 years down the line someone comes and says, well, this caused this and this and this, well, there's evidence either way. So it's not necessarily, my decision won't impact what this board does.
I think we'd still like your,
Okay.
when you're done, just
I
send us
think
a
you'll
letter.
find a wide
Yeah.
variety of answers.
Yeah,
Research.
Yeah, and it's more collective.
Even so we can share with everyone.
I just have one last comment, not a question. The corner in front of Pelto's house is pretty evil without having large equipment going up and down it. So that's my only comment.
Evil as in, can you be a little bit more descriptive?
You know that term. You
No,
take it all the
not
time.
passable at some times of the
Right.
day.
When you meet
That
a,
is an issue that has to be brought up with selectmen and the police if there's issues with what they do on the road.
I just didn't know if there was.
I can't do
Pothole
it,
or
this is
something
more,
I
we
didn't
can't do
know.
anything.
no, I understand, but it is a consideration of the project because you've got, what, 15 people that live beyond it? And meeting a 20-ton truck coming up around that corner could be rather exciting. Especially for a 93-and-a-half-year-old woman.
You all right?
Yeah, I'm all set here.
All right, thank you.
Well, it's even a tough call for a school bus going up there.
Yes.
Or a logging truck, or, right? Yeah.
Or an illegal four-wheeler.
There's been a bunch of traffic like that.
We're the rural district, rural districts.
Any other public comments? Close our public comment section so we can start discussing these applications and the conditional waivers he's asked for.
And Kyle, do you mean close the public hearing
Yes.
for these? Okay.
So there'll be no more public hearings concerning these projects.
No,
But
you're
you're more than welcome
stay.
to stay for any of the conversations that we have around it.
Can you
I
turn
would
the
love
AC
to,
back
but I
on?
live in the
Well,
other
these
side of the
meetings
state.
are live streamed, so you can always look back at them if you miss sections.
Thank you for hearing us all out.
Well, I'd just like to hear your,
Thank you for coming in.
yeah, I'd like to find out how your side.
And yes, she still drives up Bigelow.
That's good for her.
It is.
And
I have a gentleman I work for in
We've met a couple
'94, he still
times.
walks
Yes.
the way back.
Staying on
Take
Hill.
care.
She's got a neighbor that stopped walking 10 years ago, that's 80.
I gotta work for
She still drives a John Deere mower, so yeah.
You gotta stay moving.
Absolutely, thank you. And I will get you those questions that I signed.
I didn't, I'll probably do that.
Perfect, thank you.
I didn't know.
Yes, of course. I just want you to know, I think it's a great idea. I've hunted that territory.
Yes, sir.
in the past. Yeah,
Keep talking a little bit about this.
I have no problem with people talking, can we just move it
Sure.
out?
Seems like we
Yeah, if you could.
But I knew it was posted in a few places, so I stopped.
I don't see why not.
Thank you.
Carol, I know it's becoming a little noisy in the room, but can you hear me?
Do we feel we still need Mr.
If you guys don't mind.
I think we should have him stay.
Sorry, no, if you're staying.
If he wants to, absolutely. I think if we do come up with questions, and he is not here,
I'm gonna wait till it clears up for a second. People are filtering out.
They want us to talk to her, but I'm gonna just stay for the rest of the meeting.
Carol, just a clarifying question, is it, planning board has 60 days to make a decision?
65.
65? Okay.
And that, of course, can be extended by agreement
Okay,
with the applicant.
okay. Okay, great.
That puts it at September 3rd, 4th?
It'd be August, right?
That seems very far.
No, wait, June.
Oh, wait.
26, right?
To give them information.
Yeah, you might be right. June,
You know,
It might be the very last week of August, it might be 5 days off.
okay, so we have a couple meetings, of course, for them. I just wanted to let the board know Carol wrote, that the old master plan references Mackey Road and South Street have been voted as, have a scenic, like capital S
You
designation.
don't need a big pole, you don't need a classic.
No, we don't.
Yeah,
Thank you. So,
and,
I thought it was West Hill.
yeah. It's possible though, she said there could have been another designation since, you know, the master plan is
I
being met.
think I have a list.
Yeah, do you?
I think so, because I made one for the
I remember, okay, right.
So I can look at, I can look.
Could you, yeah, make a note to bring that to the next
Yes.
meeting, just so we're, I had one other, actually, I had a question, but it's more procedural, it's not like an applicant question to applicant.
Yes.
Well, it was, I think, I'd like us to think about doing a site walk of these properties, especially the, Bigelow Hill Road site. And,
I think that would be some good to do some on-foot visual.
yeah, since I've been on the board, we haven't done one, and I was hoping other members or Carol could.
We did the complete streets.
No, well, the site
We
walk,
haven't done a site
in
plan.
terms of a site plan, is like a specific thing. Like, we have to notice it a certain way, and,
Yeah, because you're gonna have a.
like, it's like a public meeting, essentially, and I don't, but I was hoping, another board member or Carol could advise us on how that would be done.
I personally.
Yeah, it's pretty simple, it just needs a 24-hour notice to be posted, it doesn't have to go in the newspaper, so just in your regular places in town. And if you have a quorum, then of course someone needs to take minutes, but they're very basic, because you're not really going to be talking about specific details, you're just going to be basically being shown by the applicant, you know, the salient sections of the land.
Okay.
So it's really pretty simple.
Carol, though, what about, I mean, let's say 20 abutters, you know, want to participate in this site walk. Can we deny them?
Oh, good question. You know, that's something that lawyers, of course, disagree on. There is one camp that says butters do not have a right to enter onto private property unless the property owner gives them permission.
Mhm.
There is another camp that says, well, if the property owner and applicant do not agree to let abutters onto the property, then that's an automatic denial. So there does not seem to be a consensus in the legal world as to where that stands, so I think you just have to kind of, you know, sort that out yourselves. If there's agreement to let them on, great, then no problem. If there isn't, then you all are gonna have to make a decision.
Can a landowner deny us a site walk?
Well, ideally, there would be a statement in the application that says, you know, by signing this application, I agree to allow the planning board, you know, on the property for any inspections. But barring that, I think that it's sort of an automatic, and if not, that would certainly be grounds for a disapproval if you were denied access to the property.
Okay. Well, that's super helpful. I read through the supplemental material, you know, responses provided, but I think for me as a board member, it would be helpful to see the properties and issues in person.
I think one of the property owners is here.
I'm not the owner, my parents are the owners, or I'm just a
Oh,
neutral party. I don't have a financial stake in this, I'm just here for family support.
I just think so many of the issues, of course, that are brought up, you know,
I'm perfectly
is
fine with a
meaningful
site walk.
in this boardroom.
I'm a visual kinetic learner.
Yes, I would like that as well. Although Bigelow Hill is wet and rocky and full of
Now you
ferns
can be
about this
roll-
tall.
I'm more worried about being embarrassed by people showing up like.
It's been cut over, so there's a lot of tops and things underneath, and then the ferns have grown over them, so when you're walking through.
So you're saying we're gonna have fun?
So you're gonna trip a lot, and you're gonna get a lot of ticks.
You are gonna trip, they are gonna trip, that's good.
And may I ask a question, because if you want us to help, I mean, if you were gonna let us do the site walk with you, we all know that property like the back of our hand, so if you can just do it yourselves, I don't think we would care. Just I know that you were trying to get us to be able to do it with you. I'm just saying.
I wasn't trying to do that specifically, but
Just
we
trying to-
have to, account for that when we're planning it.
Sure.
So, it is a public meeting.
Right. I think we will ask him what his thoughts are, when we can do it. I like to do it sooner than later, but my first real free week would be the first week of August.
I'm in the same boat.
It's supposed to rain that time.
Bring a raincoat, I don't care.
And an umbrella.
You grew up in New England. So I guess my question as chair would be, would you be applicable to a site walk in the 3 locations?
As an applicant, absolutely. I just want to double check with all landowners, but I can't imagine anyone would have an issue with you all walking on the site.
I guess get a hold of them and then email us back and then we'll work out dates.
Great.
Do you have anything else for him tonight? I hate to make him just stand there.
Yeah, I have some questions. It seems like many of the public comments were around the construction phase and the amount of traffic and the noise. Can you talk a little bit more in detail? Do you have an idea of, I think you said 6 months for construction?
Yep.
Maybe volume of vehicles, frequency, time of day,
Yep.
any of that?
Yeah, so obviously we mobilize once, maybe it's not obvious, but from a construction standpoint, you mobilize one time. So there's a flow of traffic where after an initial laydown area is cleared, we set up a construction trailer to serve as our project manager's office, right? You guys have seen these, the White Eagle trailers that have 3 steps that go up, they got an air conditioner, whatever. After that, the heavy equipment is brought up, dropped off onto the site, right? Heavy equipment operators are parking on the site by the project manager's trailer. They're getting in their heavy equipment every morning, they're doing their job during the day, they're going home. That first phase, we call it site prep, tree clearing, grading, etc. That takes about 2 to 3 months. Obviously, for a smaller project, it happens very quickly. For a bigger project, it happens.
So for the tree clearing, you're doing a regular logging operation, are you chipping or bringing the trees out, or what are you doing with
So
that?
we'll bring in a forester to figure out exactly what they want to do with the tree clearer. They'll come up with a tree clearing plan, right? Beyond just we're cutting these acres, specific plan, lowercase p, right? The majority of the site will be ground, majority of the materials will be ground on site and used as mulch, fertilizer.
So you won't be taking wood chips out, you don't
We
think?
definitely won't be taking wood chips out. We may take some of the bigger logs out. We is the tree clearer, right? I hire the tree clearer. He says, you want me to leave everything on site? It costs this much. You want me to remove? I'll pay you for the board feet. So they put together their proposal.
So if you're not moving chips back and out, that reduces some of your traffic.
Like I said, there's one major mobilization. Yes, some logs will come out, but not many. All 3 of these sites have been selectively cleared, so a lot of that high quality, high value wood's probably already gone. All the stumps, all the other materials, everything will be tub ground on site. What we generally do is we create a mulch berm around the limits of clearing. That helps with erosion controls and supports just whatever erosion control features we're gonna go up there. It's all local, it's not invasive, right? We're not introducing anything, it's all organic material that's going to decompose. If anything, it's going to help the site stabilize faster. So that's the tree clearing phase, which will take, it happens fast. You guys have seen what somebody can do up there with a fellow buncher and a bunch of operators. So after the trees are cleared and the stumps are pulled, the topsoil is going to be stockpiled, and then the grading is going to happen, where some of the high points and the low points are balanced according exactly to the grading plan. Right after that.
So do you expect to do any blasting or
No,
anything?
no blasting. No blasting. After the permitting is done and prior to our construction, we'll do something called geotechnical analysis. We don't do it initially because it costs about $25,000 and it's an impactful site discovery event. Everything else we do is no impact, right? Geotech, I gotta go out there, I probably would have to. For the Bigelow Hill site, we're probably talking 15 to 16 test pits, mini excavators, I'm clearing trees already, I'm impacting the property. If I do that before a planning board meeting, everybody says I already started construction and it causes a lot of issues. That geotechnical work gives me information that I need to do my final foundation designs. And really what that means is, am I gonna screw my screws directly into the ground or am I gonna pre-drill them? That's it. It's a modified Bobcat with a boom arm that drills out these holes. The foundations are 6-foot Phillips head screws. Big giant screws, like a big one, they're fun to look at. They get driven into the ground, that's your foundation. There's thousands of them that are out there. At the end for decommissioning, they come right out. We prefer the screws because they work a lot better in the cobbly, ledgy soils that we have up here. And also they're way better for the neighbors, right? If we do the pile driven stuff, that's where we really start to run into issues where you hear 10,000 times for a considerable amount of period of time. So that's why we propose the screws here. But grading, topsoil goes back over, surveyor comes out, hits.
So do you anticipate having to bring fill in then? So you're not taking fill out?
Those grading plans are balanced sites. We don't want to bring anything in, anything out.
So no fill, you don't?
No fill, no. The only materials that are brought in are small, specific sand backfill for our trenches that we dig. And it's not likely that we're gonna find sand on site. When we build in southeast Massachusetts, tons of sand on site, we just use it. Up here, I'm not gonna find appropriate sand, I gotta backfill my trenches. That might be the only import, but minimum. No soils coming off, no soils coming on. I do that for the obvious reason of it's very expensive and to bring stuff on and off. And then the second is just easier to do a balanced site with a grading standpoint. That's part of the reason when we picked our site, we started doing our final design and kind of smearing the surface a little bit so it worked with the stormwater runoff. We ended up plus, what was it, 1.5 acres. That pushed me over that 35% limit on Bigelow.
So all the glacial boulders and stuff is just staying on site, all the stuff that's on top?
All the stuff that's on top generally gets moved to the edge. But we've never done blasting before. That would be a totally reasonable condition to get into the plans that says no blasting.
There's one huge boulder out there, the size of this room.
We can move.
I think you're gonna wanna move it.
Yep.
It's in the acreage you're talking about.
Yep. No, there's certainly circumstances where we run into a giant rock that we don't move, we design around it. If we run into a spine of ledge that costs more to chip out, or if it's in our trench, we design around that stuff right now. We're at the planning board phase, so everything is generally conceptual. You guys have a 15-page plan set. By the time the building inspector sees it, it's a 150-page plan set. So there's a lot more detail that goes into construction.
Mm-hmm.
When we started talking about traffic,
Mm-hmm.
the big point, like I said, semantically we're having an issue. In my mind, construction traffic is number one, it's big for mobilization, and then you've got your operators coming back and forth in their vehicles. And then there's a demobilization where all the big equipment comes out. There's 2 or 3 different demobilization phases, right? Big yellow equipment shows up, big yellow equipment leaves. Smaller white equipment shows up, that leaves, and then it's all wiring and whatnot. So in terms of traffic during construction, we're not gonna demobilize with the D8s and the feller bunchers every day. It's just once to set up and once to demobilize.
So for noise, you've got the feller bunchers, the chippers, the bulldozers, the excavators.
Yeah, we try to avoid where we can, right? That's where I brought up the example of pile driving. You brought up the example of blasting.
So I think our construction ordinances allow trucks to move pretty liberally 7 days a week, I think. Are you planning on trucks going in?
It's very typical. It's very typical for you guys to tell me when I cannot be moving equipment. Generally, it's kept open because you never know what road there is, so you consider school bus pickups, people getting to and from work, right? Certainly don't want work starting before a certain hour. Often a town has those noise bylaws built in, sometimes they don't. So that's, again, one of the very standard conditions that, people around the corner, when we get to the closing of the hearing and the approval of the project, I would imagine somebody on the board is appointed to work with me to draft the conditions, and then our final meeting is reviewing the actual conditional use permit or the conditional use permit approval. And often there are 8, 10, 12 conditions that are each a couple sentences long that highlight the project specific concerns that you guys want to make sure I take care of.
So the before I ask the next question, on the construction, I'm gonna move off to a different topic, are there other? So the concerns about health, I have not looked into those at all, but I assume people were talking about high-frequency power lines, but I'm not sure. So what is the voltage and the frequency on those three-phase lines?
So we can't change the voltage. The voltage is the exact same.
But do you happen to know what it is, just out of
Yes,
curiosity?
34 kV.
Okay.
The Dorp Street sites may be 12. But those are what we call low voltage. I corrected the gentleman here when he said high voltage. These are low voltage. Nothing that's any different than any other town and city and state throughout the country. There's nothing unique about these projects. We're utilizing the exact same infrastructure, electrical infrastructure, as has existed forever.
Are you aware of any other than there's a fair amount of literature on power lines and potential health hazards. Are you aware of any other literature around solar installations?
Absolutely not. As I said, I wouldn't be doing this if I was aware of anything that would be detrimental to human health.
I have a question about decommissioning. I think the decommissioning plan is the amount of the bond would be 125% of the current cost.
There's two different ways to do it, depending on the jurisdiction. The state of New Hampshire is ambiguous on it. You can either take the estimate and multiply it by 1.25, or you can escalate it at a rate. I picked the one that was the higher number. So I didn't do it at 125%. I think I increased it 3% per year, 2% per year, 2.5% per year, something like that. I looked at both. One was bigger than the other. I took the bigger one and put it
I
in.
think you may have done the 125, so I remember.
That's what I thought I remember
Yeah.
seeing.
I think so.
And that was probably the bigger number.
Okay.
Would be in the main application.
I'm gonna look that up.
I think there's a section
It's the
specifically on decommissioning.
Now,
appendix H.
each one has their own bond, correct? It's not one for all, correct?
Yeah, everything is completely separate, standalone.
Right.
3 bonds, 3 different decommissionings. The point is, everyone is a little bit different. The safety and operation plan might be a little bit different. You can imagine on Bigelow Hill Road, we'd be talking about more residences, we'd be talking about what to be aware of, et cetera, where on the Dorp Street sites, we'd be talking about highway equipment, highway trucks, et cetera. So that's why I think, as we talked about last week, I gave you guys the generic safety plans, so that once it's finally approved, all your conditions have been written and approved, all the state's conditions have been written and approved, we can incorporate any of that into our operations plan, our safety plan, our decommissioning plan, et cetera. They're meant to be site-specific prior to construction.
So, I'm sorry.
Question, so Bigelow Hill, introduction on your decommission plan. The project boundary encompasses approximately 28.3 acres within the fence on approximately 8-acre parcel. But the applicant is for 32 acres?
You said Bigelow Hill?
Yes.
Whatever it says, obviously it would match what the final plan was, but you can imagine a lot of these things are constantly moving around. And I may have copied and pasted. I think 28.3 was the first number we had, and then it got a little bit bigger when we did the stormwater, so I can upgrade that if you need to update.
I would like to make sure it matches, make sure it doesn't change the cost. But I think 28.3 is the actual 35% of coverage.
Could be what it is, and we ended up at just 32. Yeah, there'll be a minor update to cost, upgrade to cost.
Yeah,
Increase.
because 35% of 83 is like 29.05, so I feel.
That's probably what we were targeting, and then we got a little bit bigger at the last minute.
So I just wanna make sure our, have to check the other thing, make sure the decommission plan covers that extra almost 4 acres.
Thank you.
what cost increase that would have.
Generally, again, a condition that's reasonable, and we can get to this later, is the decommissioning plan is updated the final time just prior to,
Building.
the building inspect, the building permit application, so that everything matches the construction set.
I just jumped out of me, that's all.
Totally, yep.
And with 14 million pages.
Impressed. There's a lot of save as,
Yeah.
find and replace, and most of this that one.
Just wanna make sure we're covered there. Any other questions?
Yeah, are you able to, I don't know that I have a firm idea of the overall timeline for when these would start, when they would be done, et cetera. Are you able to put a very high level timeline together?
High level, so the kind of, the bogey that we deal with is the utility. So the utilities right now are studying the project, it's called the system impact study. That's gonna take another 4 or 5 months before they finish their study. Purpose of their study is to tell me what they need to upgrade in order to safely operate the project, safely and reliably operate the project. Those line items, those upgrades, right? One of the upgrades is gonna be the reconductoring of the Bigelow Hill Road run. It's gonna be adding some meters, it's gonna be making some modifications to the substation, etc. Those are all components, those components have lead times, etc. So they're gonna tell me it's gonna take 18 months or so to upgrade, to do their work. They're always slower than me, so I backward schedule from their completion date through my whole 6 month is my general number. So if we're 18 months away on September 1st, that puts us at, November, December, January, February, March, we're talking March 2026 for their construction completion. So I'll go backwards from there. I'm gonna run into the winter, so I'm gonna go even earlier. So I'm probably looking at starting construction summer 2025. So approximately a year from now, if you guys were approved to approve today, I still wouldn't do anything. I'd wait for the utility to finish, and then we do all of our design, I do all my financing, I do all my diligence work with my investors, and then right around this time next year would be a reasonable time to construct. I'd be able to do all the site work in a dry season, so I'm less possible for blowouts, anything like that with the tree clearing. I can get all my work done before the winter, all my heavy equipment work done before the winter. I can relax a little bit there, come out in the late spring, and I can finish up all the wiring, do all the witness testing. It's also a great time to stabilize the site in the spring for the obvious reasons, everything's growing. And then I'm working with the utility in March and April of 26 to turn the project on. And once that happens, that's day 0, and then we go for 20, 25, 30, 35 years, depending on how everything happens.
So all three would go in parallel with the same time?
They're all separate. I'm assuming, parallel-ish, right? Because I can't have the same people, and, from a contractor standpoint, I'll probably utilize the same contractor. That person and that crew might go from site to site to site. So it makes sense to me to start with Bigelow, get the tree cleared and the site prepped, and then demobilize those guys, and instead of sending them all the way back home, we send them over to door west, and then he goes to door east, right? So we'll kind of set it up so that it's like a domino kind of deal, where we're electricians, structural guys, whatever, going from site to site to site. So each one will be staggered by approximately 6 to 8 weeks.
Now, Bigelow Hill, start there. You had to go over the 35%. You put in financial hardship. Is that due to trying to get enough output / profit to cover the cost of doing it?
I mean, it's about defining the most efficient system for the property that's what we'd like to do. I think if it, you know, I also just feel like whether it's 35 or 36 or 37%, there's very little impact to the spirit of the bylaw. If you guys really feel strongly, or you just don't want to deal with a waiver, I'll just tighten up the fence a little bit, and 2.5 acres will disappear, and we'll be under 35%. We won't have to talk about it. But I just think that we all want the best site, the most efficient site, and I think that's it. And it just happens that that 35% number that we discussed way back in January or whenever it was, we all kind of agreed that it was a little bit arbitrary. Let's start there. But you guys can tell me what you'd like to do. If it's great.
So do you think, when you say you're gonna bring, let's say you're gonna drop it to 35%, would you just move the fence in closer to your units, or are you gonna reduce the number of solar cells?
I'd probably do a little bit of each. There's, as you can see, when I looked at, so, you know, there's a couple areas here, like I worked in straight lines, right? Like if I draw a straight line here to the corner, that's probably 2 acres. I was probably using that space for construction trailer because I wanted it inside the fence or this or that, but I could just pull that fence that way, keep the entire access road, put the fence under it, and that's probably 2.5 acres right there. This to me was just a, you know, better way to do it, safer way to do it, more reliable way to do it, but like I said, that's what I saw. And I could just put my laydown area outside the fence.
I'd be curious if drawing that straight line would bring you to your 35% without reducing your solar.
It'd be very, very close.
Maybe just check in and get back to us. Maybe a simple solution.
It's it is a simple solution. If you guys, as a board, would prefer that I don't ask for a waiver, I'm perfectly happy to do it. I know people got hung up on it. I think they got hung up on, I think one gentleman brought up waiver versus variance.
Yeah.
So if you guys, let me just remove it.
Cause I can understand the Dorch Street one.
Yep.
You got wetlands on the other side, so you got less area, you have room on the other side. I kinda get that when you're industrial. It's the Bigelow Hill one. I just feel, we just put, the other thing is, we just did this ordinance, I hate to violate it the very first application we had.
Yeah,
It's
not lazy engineering, it's straight line engineering.
It's
So
straight line, I get that, there's
tighten it
multiple sides of this, I just, in working with you, I'd like to see if you can just come back and say, hey, drawing a straight line fixed it.
Fair. Done.
Yeah, just to elaborate on that, I know when you talked, when we were kind of discussing, or you were discussing it, you know, you said we didn't have anything really in place for anything over 10 acres, and I don't think that was like I think that was purposeful. I don't think that it was an oversight that we didn't size it. I think we just never wanted to see something like that.
No, I don't, if I implied that, I don't think it was an oversight.
I don't know that you implied that.
I recall discussing the intent being, you didn't want a project, a parcel covered.
Completely covered, yeah.
Yeah, that's fine with me.
I have a question. Do you use any kind of chemicals for vegetation control?
I mean, that again comes down to the conditions. I think there are certain circumstances where you'd want to use a fertilizer, right? And you'd want to encourage growth, or you'd want to prevent other growth. So it's however you guys want to do it. Our typical pollinator spec, which I'd like to use here, and I'd like to hear from the Conservation Commission or any of you folks on it, does not require any pesticides, anything. It's a native pollinator species. It's meant to grow. It's meant to spread under the fence and whatever, wherever it can survive and flourish. But if some boards prefer a use of chemical fertilizers or pesticides or anything to prevent any invasive species, but we do not intend on using any.
So that's both fertilizers and pesticides, so you don't need to.
I don't need anything.
You don't need to get rid of the weeds or anything using that.
Nope, the seed mix we have is not arbitrary. It's been developed by a landscape architect to comply with the Massachusetts programs, which have very, very high specs on their seed mixes for their pollinators. And so we basically had the same guy just convert it for these 3 sites. He spent a little bit of time, looked at kind of the natives in the area and made a couple tweaks to the seed mix. And
Is those mixes in these books? I haven't got through them all.
they should be, but
Gotcha.
yeah, I think there's a planting plan. It shouldn't be in the book, it should be on the plan. That should have a seed mix spec.
So you mentioned the Eversource in your timeline, and how long they take and then come back in. Department of Environmental Services approvals, are they similarly lengthy or is that more controlled?
Yep, so the DES process is very lengthy. It's a state level permit. It's used for all impact greater than a couple acres. So they've got a queue, right? Every CVS, every Walmart, every big home, every residential subdivision, everything goes through DES for their alteration and terrain permit, and in some cases their dredge and fill permits. So we just submit and get in line. So I have my permit applications all at like a 95% phase right now, and all they're waiting on is the final plan set and then any other information from this portion of it. Because you can imagine at the state level, there's a local level correspondence, and so it was our intent to use this permitting process as the formal comment period. Again, with the AOTs, you guys will get notified, so you'll have another opportunity to comment. But it takes a while, and when I said if I got my permit from you guys today, I wouldn't do anything, because I'd still have to wait for Eversource, I'd still have to wait for my state level permits. About 6 months to get those permits.
Okay.
Have you been ever requested to add like beehives on them to work with your pollination mix to?
Bat boxes, beehives, even in some cases where there is an endangered species in the area that's been identified, we work with habitat consultants to do some work. An example is the eastern box turtle down in southeast Mass is a big one that we don't build on box turtle land, but sometimes it's somewhat adjacent. So we build some box turtle dens and whatnot by leaving trees in a certain way. And, but there's no critical endangered species that have been identified in this area that would require that. But northern long-eared bat is the big one in New England, as well as just the general poor kind of production of pollinators. So flowers, bee boxes, bat boxes, and certainly hives, we could do it. But it's not the square hives that you think about.
So we will be getting our fire department involved, the road agent, et cetera. What's a good process for you for?
Will be implied, like, usually the fire department and the police don't get involved. We notified them when we applied, we notified them prior to our application, you guys have reached out. Generally, police is not super interested. Is it fenced? Make sure high school kids aren't going in there with a case of beers. And from a fire department standpoint, we do a fire department training with local fire departments, and ultimately summarizing that training, it's we're insured, stay out of it, don't worry about anything, protect the outside. That's it. So any type of fire would not spread. But the implication is that there's going to be a fire, there's not going to be a fire.
So one of the public comments was about the fire risk and fire consequences. What are those?
Very, very, very low. There's not much that can burn out there. These equipment pads are sited in central locations. I'm not aware of any ground mount solar having any fire issues in New England ever. If you want to type in solar fire, what you're going to get are rooftop projects in the Southwest. There's been a couple of those, a Walmart fire, etc., but that's where these panels are mounted on black roofs. You can imagine the heat out there. These panels are mounted on poles, complete circulation around them. There's not a lot that can happen there.
And you said that you would recommend that they just contain and not worry about what's inside the fence.
That's generally what we're talking about during the trainings. The only time it gets tricky is when there's a person inside, and that's where the focus of the training is. When somebody is down in a fire event and you need to enter the facility, this is how you do it safely. A lot of it talks about the simple stuff that you sometimes forget. These are electrical panels that don't turn off just because you pull the switch, right? The solar's hitting it, so you can't spray water and whatnot. That's conductor with water, all that. So there's trainings, there's ways we talk about it. But ultimately, in the event of some type of fire,
So
We don't care.
within the fence, do you have electricity above ground at all, or your cables buried?
Everything's below ground, but just to be clear, panels themselves, if
Right.
there was a fire at noon on August 15th, the panel is energized, right? We can shut the project off at the street so that no power can get out. In the event a tree falls and Eversource is doing some work, they will shut that project off. There's also a feature in all the inverters, it's called anti-islanding. I brought it up briefly. When the inverter is constantly reaching out and touching the grid, making sure it's there, whenever there's an outage, it immediately shuts off. That's UL 1741, it's a national electric code requirement.
At some point, I see you're gonna use pressure treated pine wood.
Yep.
What do you
So there's often an expectation to replace the fence as part of normal operations and maintenance. For years and years and years, a metal chain link with barbed wire was used, but as we tried to move away from that for aesthetic and environmental purposes, yeah, some type of maintenance gets included, but that's kind of part of our typical cost and plan.
Am I allowed to ask you guys a question?
I will allow it, yes.
Okay. In the event of a fire, I understand that he says it's a low probability, but you know, what if a lightning strikes it or whatever? The fire department wouldn't be able to get past his access road to fight that fire. So in the condition it is right now.
That's why we're contacting them. And they do have brush trucks, so we may have to call another town brush trucks, if it gets to that point. Like that's, how it's gonna be fought and what they want to see is gonna be, we have to wait for them to answer that. I can't, tell you to contact them, I can't tell you what they wanna do, or how they wanna do it, or how they feel about it. It'd be hearsay for me to say that. I imagine he had concerns, he will say so. I know Mark in past, if he feels it's past his purview, he has said to contact state marshal before on the project, so. When I hear from him, I guess I can give you a better answer. But I do not have a definitive answer for you, I guess is the correct answer. Such tough crap. I think the next step for me would be a on-site visit, so I can really, for me, it'd be good to see visual, put some of this into a visual. Before I went.
You wanna talk about a date now so that I can?
Yeah, contact the property owners.
Yeah, I expect the answer to be yes, so I don't think it's a waste of time for us to circle the date.
Is it first week of August?
Yeah, first, which is like 2 days, or, I mean, the 2nd of August. How's everyone on that?
What day of week is
That
that?
is a Friday.
Sure, daytime hours, obviously.
I think that'd be best. We can try it tonight, but. When we set the date for 2nd and get back to us property owners if they have like a time or something.
The Bigelow Hill Road's the one that I think is, everyone's curious about, right? So landowner lives in North Carolina, no one's there, Miss Butts would be fine with it.
I guess we get just email.
Yep.
Copy from her saying, hey, that's
Yep,
good.
I'll just confirm with her over email, and then,
I know Bigelow Hills is definitely one that's of interest, but I do wanna see the others too.
Yeah, I wanna see, because of the wetlands on the
The wetlands and just this, for us, is, for me, is the first time we really deal with this, so I wanna really get into it.
Great,
I don't know
August
anything.
2nd, I'll confirm that, with Elizabeth, but
Yep.
should be.
Just so it's alright.
Is there a specific time?
He's gonna get back to us.
Okay.
So I figured-
I'm not gonna get back to you, you guys tell me what's best for you, it'll be fine.
What do we,
I'm just gonna confirm 8/2 at.
When do you get out?
I can take time off, boy, I got enough notice.
Mid to late afternoon?
Yeah, that won't work for me.
My boss doesn't care where I live.
What would work for you, Mike? I have to run a booth at the Cheshire Fair that night from like 3 to 10, so anytime before that. So
I think then early in the morning would be good for me.
I'm only gonna say, we might wanna do earlier morning, before heat hits maybe. If we push to the afternoon or night, we could be,
Or weather.
Yeah.
Afternoon weather too. Yeah,
So
that
maybe-
works for me.
How far are you coming from?
maybe 9 in the morning, is that too early for people?
No, that's fine.
You have a preference on order, you wanna start at Bigelow and say?
I think Bigelow would be the best, that seems to be the highest priority, so I feel we might spend some more time there.
So maybe let's kind of hold an hour at Bigelow and 30
Yeah.
minutes at each of the doors.
Yeah.
9 to 11, sound about right?
Yes.
Okay. Generally what I do is I have kind of my phone and I'll put a KMZ file on
Yeah, like a map
Google
file.
Maps, so if you guys get Google Maps, I can send Elizabeth the KMZ file, so sometimes it works, sometimes it don't, but at least you can see the fence line and you can see your blue dot wandering around the fence line. Generally, that's the hardest thing to do is orient yourself because it, you know, the more you spend looking at this paper and then you get out there and you get twisted pretty quick. So that's, in my mind, the best way to do it. Google Earth is probably the best app
Yeah.
for that, but I'll send that around.
You agree with that then?
I have no idea what my schedule, I don't have anything else specifically scheduled now, but emergencies can pop up,
Yeah.
so,
But I think most of the board would be there at least, so.
yeah.
Now what we do, we're out of some conflict.
Exactly.
Yep, that works.
Yeah, I'll have a lot of things to say once we, have all the information from us, but,
Yeah.
I don't have any other questions.
I don't think tonight I have any more questions, or really do some more digestion and see it in person, I think. I think we'll be I'll sit with you for tonight.
Alright, well just to repeat it back to you guys, generally, I'm just gonna kind of pull a couple health links.
Mhm.
You know, obviously, I'm a biased party. I said what I said already. I'll provide a couple links, but I'll kind of depend on you guys to also do some counter research as well. And certainly copy in the Board of Health. And then specifically for the sites, I'm gonna upgrade, or I'm gonna modify the Bigelow Hill Road site such that the fence line is right at 35%. That's gonna cause a actually that might make the decommissioning bond work.
Yeah.
But I'll update that again as well if the acreage doesn't match what's written down. And then I saw you flipping through, I'll just make sure I tie off with a specific appendix the exact seed mix that we're gonna use, so you guys have it in front of you.
That way I can send the Conservation Commission and I can.
And then I think what I'm gonna do also that feels like it could be appropriate is I'm just gonna put together a list of what I'd consider standard conditions, so that a lot of the things we've talked about are maybe obvious to me, but not to you guys, cause it's the first conditional use permit that'll be issued for a solar project. So I'm just gonna put together what I would say are the kind of top 10 type items that deal with firefighter training, decommissioning bonds placed, updates to this stuff, just so you guys can start to see that. And then, I think that'll just help with the discussion a little bit, maybe help with the general public understanding that I'm not just getting a, green light to go out there and do what I want. Okay.
Perfect, thank you.
And then, site walk 8 to 9 AM. Did we have a date certain to which we continued this meeting? I might have missed that in all the chaos.
Yeah, I don't think we mentioned it yet. I think it would actually be the first week of August.
As a group, right? Like, I don't know.
The public hearing is done, right?
Right, yeah.
So we have
Our next scheduled meeting would be the 7th.
7th, which would be after
August.
the sidewalk, which would be
First
perfect.
and third Wednesday of the month.
Okay, so 8/7 is the next meeting.
Yep.
And I guess I just didn't follow what you guys said. You closed the public hearing.
Yes.
Does that mean I can't provide this information, or I can still provide you guys with
We
information?
are requesting this, you still provide it.
Okay, good.
So close the public hearing, closes
Just
the public
discussion.
input.
Okay. Okay, while I'm modifying the Bigelow Hill plans, do we wanna talk about the road?
I think we need to make sure you're either not disturbing or improving that culvert.
Maybe the latter.
And then up to, did we request pavement?
Should we bring the road agent into that discussion?
Yeah, I think that's what we're waiting for.
Let's leave it.
I'll have to call John, I emailed them, but I feel like email's not something those guys check. Cause I feel like when I mentioned something, we were talking about the pallets at work.
I think the site walk might,
Clear that all up.
yeah, I don't know if we should get into that till we see it.
Okay, so I'm gonna leave the road where it is.
Yeah.
I still think that approving the waiver and then just telling me exactly what to do or having a condition to say like prior to construction, we'll discuss the road separately and apart could be easier if you get the road commissioner involved, but I'm happy to do it all up front if that's what we want to do.
Our site plan review checklist asks for written statements, it says, from road agent,
Road
fire
agent.
department, police department, so we don't have those yet, and I think we could use that as it's a perfect chance to let them know, we want some written feedback, and yeah, in particular,
Hank can tell us exactly how far the trucks can go, John can tell us exactly what he sees, he can say like, there's no culvert there, but there needs to be water.
yeah.
He could,
Or the rest of the road too, I mean, there's gonna be impacts to the rest of the road, which was just.
Yeah, I thought about that, I wonder, I mean, technically speaking, the roads are posted until a certain date, and then you can run equipment like that over them. I know that road was just paved, and, there's several culverts along the way,
Were they post like February to May or something like that?
yeah, mud season, more or less, right,
March, it starts around mid-March.
Mid-March to,
Yeah.
I think
But
there's,
maybe it is
I feel like
Yeah, it
there's
depends
some
on the
authority where a
season.
town can like require like a bond or something to make sure that, you know, during construction,
Oh,
the road isn't
sure,
like,
right.
the culverts didn't crumble, you know, and.
And I think that would extend to Eversource. I know the guys hanging the fiber and the cable lines and left a mess at the end of the street. Yeah, like there's just water. Yeah. There's lines of wires like laying on the side of the road.
Jerry will catch on the mower. So let's invite them. Can you try emailing them?
yes,
I feel like mine went to spam, cause I went for my,
It seems if I tag the select board in it, I get a much faster response from everybody.
You copy the select board, you mean? Yeah, smart.
I
It's not a bad idea to copy, you should copy the select board.
Right, yeah,
anyway.
but I seem to get a much
Yeah.
faster response.
But in this scenario, I think we should copy the select board in case, I mean, they may very well.
I usually see John in person, so I can ask him in person.
yeah, I saw him in person yesterday, and I didn't even think to ask him.
No, that's
He
fine.
got my email.
But I'll call John and I'll email the other two because they're usually pretty fast responders.
I don't think we need, I really just need to read and go through this before the walk, I don't think I really have anything else to.
I think it'd be beneficial for me to just see it before we go further, but I got a list of things I'd like to discuss about all the projects, but I don't think this is the right time.
Okay.
Some of it might get answered on a walk, and
Okay.
I might change my mind on a walk.
I'll put those back. Yes. All right, do we have anything else on the agenda for tonight?
I have one small master thing plan.
Alright.
Item. So the master plan is updated and done. Henry drafted a letter. I did a little work with on it.
Oh, the survey, right?
Yeah. Master plan survey.
Survey the whole thing,
Okay, survey. That's all done. Here it is, one page. That was easy. So, just want to discuss two things. If you could read the letter, see if we have any edits on it. And two, who we are sending the letter to. We've got two options, either just boards, commissions, and committees, or boards, commission, committees, and all departments and staff. So, that for discussion.
Yes.
Just so you know, if we do decide to do it to all departments and boards and committees and everything, they have lovely mailboxes. So all we have to do is print them each a copy and put them in the mailboxes, and they always check their mailboxes. So
I like that, sounds simple, but it gets everyone. I mean, I'm fine with that, I figure the more you hit, the better.
There was also some comments about the master plan. We could always reach out to some of the individuals that are concerned about it and see if they wanna help participate on
I agree.
updating it.
I agree.
So
I
we
think some of the comments around it were kind of
Thank you, yes, I
erroneous
will get home
wild,
safely.
but-
Yes. Well, that's what I was
Cool.
saying, we can also ask them later.
Thanks, everybody, I appreciate
Have a
it.
great day.
Just for everyone's information, there's where it says enclosure, there's a link to something. It's a 2-page handout that is kind of a, you know, eye-catching, what is a master plan and what are the types of things that are in it, and like a 1-sentence definition. So people who aren't, you know, aware of what they are at all have a handout. It's not, yeah, it's just a New Hampshire agency wrote it, just very generally speaking for all master plan.
And by meeting with you in this statement means the other departments. Is that how I'm understanding that? It says this may include public workshops applying for or requesting technical assistance, developing a request for proposal, and meeting with you.
Yeah.
I'm assuming that means other
The board,
departments.
committee, department, yeah.
Yeah, I was thinking, I mean, me personally, I was thinking like boards, committees and commissions
Not
rather
the
than like no, I wasn't thinking like fire, I wasn't thinking of, like,
Oh, never mind, it's addressed to boards, committees, and commissions, yeah.
yeah,
I
but
guess
no,
I skipped
no, I know,
that.
the question is it just more to elected officials or do we include all the town staff too, I guess? Do you have an opinion on that, Curtis, since you guys supervise a lot of the, you know, like the police department and then the road agent and do you have would you want it going to all staff or just to like the select board and you
I'd say,
distribute?
yeah, all staff, all committee members, all board members, and let's get all the people that actively participate
Okay.
and want to be part of this, okay, they'll get their information.
All right.
You know, get feedback on it, I mean.
More people we have, that.
Well, that's what I'm saying, it's.
I mean, you would obviously, I think, wanna include police and fire, like emergency services and all that, but, because, and they're not technically a committee and commission.
Yeah, I mean,
Right, so we'd have to say staff too,
Staff.
departments and staff, add to them.
I mean, I think it's important to see where everyone sits and reads.
Okay.
That's just me.
Everyone has different views, which we need.
Yeah. So I mean, and not just the elected ones, you know, get the ones that actually work here on a day-to-day basis.
I mean, ultimately, we're taking the views of the residents and not necessarily ourselves, right? We're here to represent the residents.
That's the attempt.
Right, so, you know, while our input is important, it's really based around how the survey.
Elizabeth, the intent originally was we were gonna put this out by email so we could attach the survey report. Is that a possibility?
I could do that.
Oh, okay.
I do have the.
You have everybody's
I have
email?
access to that. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, cause you don't want to distribute all that paper.
No, that's true. That is a lot of paper. I was just thinking for like a letter or something, but I do understand like wanting to attach the
Yeah.
report. That does make a lot of sense.
Okay, alright.
So, yeah.
So everybody okay with the letter?
I think that's good.
Okay. Yeah, so Elizabeth, I'll send you the letter and the final report.
All right.
Thanks, Chuck.
Thank you.
Anything else on the tonight?
Not to keep us here forever, but do we get any sort of replies about an open seat or anything like that?
We got two, currently, Matt Louie's one, Lisa Stedman is another one. So if she's still interested in it, I don't know, I haven't talked to her yet,
I talked to her recently.
but,
Oh, Elizabeth, raise your hand.
So
you
I
talk to her?
was supposed to reach out to her and I completely spaced it. I'm really sorry. I will reach out to her again. It just completely left my brain. And then I saw him yesterday and asked him to come by. So I'm sorry.
Sorry.
You got a lot on your plate.
And then we didn't get any further, applicants or interest in the SWRPC seat either, correct?
Right. And what we talked about, well, what I brought up last time is asking that the individual where there's consensus around Stephen Sawyer be, kind of that process be finished, that the planning commission be advised that they were nominated, the select board confirmed, but it still leaves Lisa's interest kind of in limbo or unresolved. So.
And then lastly, this looks like we cleared more than we should have. I didn't know we were noticed for things of that nature.
We actually got noticed about the theater that they built in
Stoddard?
Jaffrey.
Oh, Jaffrey too.
Yeah.
Wow, and they noticed us for like was it like a 4-family?
Yeah.
It's like a 4-family home or
Yeah, that was something right there near the golf
near the
course.
golf? Yeah, near the shadow.
Just like we about things.
Yeah, I mean, I can understand a commercial project, but on something like this, where it's just like, he literally cut too many trees.
And over the property line?
I think he went into the conservation easement or whatever, it's like, I don't know.
Encroachment extends over 22 feet from the property line.
Oh, wow, nice job. That's it for me.
Yeah, we got that. Yesterday. We got it sometime this week.
On July 9th, 2023,
Well,
what's the date on this?
it's
Oh,
dated
July
12th,
12th.
yeah.
There we go. I don't want to wait on it.
Doesn't mean, yeah, that we got that day, it just means that's when they wrote it.
Selectmen's update?
Real quick, first meeting we're having for this month is tomorrow, and it's gonna be at the Samuel E. Paul Community Center, and that's gonna be the re-ratifying the public.
Let's re-ratify the budget for this year from town meeting.
Yes, town meeting, so we're having another town meeting, special town meeting tomorrow at 5 o'clock at the community center.
So you're only be about 10 minutes, right?
It should be only 10 minutes, and that it's gonna take longer to open up, say the pledge of allegiance, do what we need to do, and then take a quick vote. If people say no to it, we'll have to do the whole process again. We notice it, redo everything. All we're doing is saying, yes, this is what we voted on back in March, this is saying everything's been posted correctly now. That's all we're doing.
Any other,
Sorry, so with that being said, town hall, the town clerk's office is gonna be closed, because they have to go to that. So plan accordingly. If you need to get they're not gonna be open late tomorrow. They're gonna be closing at least 2.5 hours early.
anything else at that meeting, like standard business or just?
Standard business and TRG is supposed to be meeting again, I think it's like 5 to 5:15, and then 5:30 is the selectmen's meeting, is actually what time, but we're having a quick TRG meeting, just standard business stuff. It's the whole town meeting thing that's gonna be taking up the most, and Kyle's running it, so.